This week on To the Contrary.
First, presidential politics and the woman card. Then, energizing millennial women. And female sportscasters reveal the intensity of online sexual harassment they must face as part of the job. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, women voters. As the Democratic and Republican frontrunners pivot to the general election, gender is the it topic. Donald Trump attacked Hillary Clinton once again, this time saying, quote, "The only thing she's got going is the woman card," end quote. He's repeating the phrase even as polls show women are overwhelmingly opposed to him in a general election. It's not just women who lean Democratic who are backing Hillary over Trump. Even married women, who mostly went for Mitt Romney over Barack Obama in 2012, have a deeply negative view of the outspoken mogul.
So, can Trump win a contest against Hillary, Sabrina, when most of the voters are women?
It's certainly going to be difficult when 54% are women. He has a steep uphill climb.
I hope this is it. I hope this is what brings down Trump, because he's managed to offend women across the board. And now I think Republican and undecided voters, women voters, are going to be moving towards the other side.
I think the ultimate Trump card is going to be party identification, and at the end of the day, the women that are out there are voting Democratic.
You know, I think he could have leveled a very effective critique against Hillary for her corporate ties and for her prior support for trade agreements. But I think for him, his comments about women consistently throughout his entire career will really be the deciding factor.
And playing off of that note, Hillary Clinton's campaign put out a so-called woman's card.
She's literally cashing in on it. I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think that it's so interesting that he would say that to her, considering in America, especially in American politics, having a woman's card really doesn't get you that far. I mean, we're ranked 65th, I think, globally for the number of women in government. So I totally agree with you. He could have gotten after her, I don't know, her speech money, her U.S. foreign policy. Of course not. He went after her gender.
Yeah, but I would say, look, I find the way that Donald Trump talks about women sort of repulsive, and his comments towards Megyn Kelly and towards Heidi Cruz, and you can list so many of them.
And going on the Howard Stern show, talking about sleeping with women.
Yeah, and his own wife, the way he talks about her.
Sleeping with dead women like Princess Diana, I mean.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable to sort of at best. But the one thing that I think he sort of taps into is this idea that Hillary Clinton has framed her entire campaign sort of around this idea that she is sort of swimming upstream against this sexist current. She had her super volunteers there.
Is that a fair characterization that she's?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
so. Absolutely.
I think she's framed her campaign around the fact that as a woman, she perhaps better understands some of the issues facing American women. And I think that is a totally legitimate thing to run on, to say that I have lived through these experiences that have shaped the life of more than half of this country.
Bernie Sanders, she was all about how uninformed he was on foreign politics and how informed and international politics, and how she had all the contacts with world leaders. I mean, there wasn't anything woman-oriented about that at all.
Well, that's certainly true. There's been much more to her campaign besides just her identification as a woman. But I'm saying that I don't think it's totally illegitimate to also bring that up.
I see what you're
but I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, there has definitely been a sort of a narrative that Hillary, I remember it was Leslie Marshall who said, oh, it's going to be a war on one woman. There has been this sort of sense. And the reality is, if you look at the research out there, voters are very open to a woman. They just want to have, they want to vote for someone who stands for their policy principles, which I think that they should be encouraged to do.
I think there's a difference in how the candidates are positioning themselves and how the viewers and the voters feel like they are. I think that Hillary Clinton, at the end of the day, is a policy wonk. She's always about policy. I feel like she's always talking about laws and legislation and what her campaign would do to change the situation, and everybody else is talking about how to woo the women's vote or how to seduce women or she's a woman. It's like, of course, when we speak about abortion or reproductive health care, of course, Hillary Clinton can relate to, I don't know, the right to getting a pap smear more than Donald Trump can. But it's offensive that she's constantly being reduced to her gender. And what Trump did this time is reduce her and all female voters down to their gender. That's the problem.
Is there any way he can remake himself, as he seems to have done in both directions so many times, and appeal to women?
I think what you're seeing is that you're also seeing recently this week a call by female Republican lawmakers to encourage him to put a woman on the ticket. You're already hearing the conversation being, how do I neutralize this? How do I show women beyond the angry, so-called angry white women that are part of the Republican Party who are willing to set aside his misogynistic viewpoints and being supportive of him and pull the woman card out? How does he find a way to compensate? And that may be the only thing that gives him a chance at that 12% of undecided women that are still out there who haven't picked a team.
Do you both think, will you both rally behind him if he becomes the nominee?
I would rather not talk about that, but I would say that I don't think that adding a woman to his ticket is going to be sufficient. If Republicans actually want to win women, they have to actually address some of these policies. And while I think that Hillary Clinton's solutions are all wrong, I think she's absolutely right to be talking about paid leave, to be talking about equal pay, to be talking about college tuition, retirement, all of these things. But Republicans are running away from them rather than embracing them with their own solutions.
Do you mind talking about it?
As a delegate to the convention, I feel like I'm in a unique spot to talk about it. But I'm in a place where, obviously paying attention to the trajectory of where the second or third or fourth ballot goes, at the end of the day, I believe there probably won't be a contested convention. So my decision will be to go and to support the voters of D.C. in terms of their decision. So, but as a person...
in their decision in terms of what?
In terms of who they elected on the first ballot. So we elected Rubio in the District of Columbia. So,
but what about the second ballot?
Hopefully there won't be a second ballot.
Well, you mean Trump will take it all on the first ballot?
It's possible. It's very possible.
All right. And what do you think, given the fact that women are closer to 60% of the electorate than they are 50%, that this means there's no way for him to win? Or do you think there is, despite all his clearly misogynistic approaches, his clearly disdain, one could say, for women generally, unless they work for him or they're his wife or his daughter, that he can overcome that?
Look, I think we can't totally write him off based upon his comments. There are always things that can happen, particularly in the global economy, in terms of security, that could dramatically reshape the race at the last minute. Those things would have nothing to do with his positions on women or with women voters in particular. But I think that to say that he absolutely can't win is a dangerous position to have. I do think that if the race continues under current conditions, he would not be able to get that slice of the female vote that he would need. And
quick question. There was a lawsuit that was written up in foreign media online this week. Trump's lawyers are calling it a hoax. They're saying the so-called plaintiff who filed it doesn't even really exist, but it accused him of horrible things that he has not yet been accused of, way more than sexist, criminal activities with young women. So how likely is it, even if this goes nowhere, how likely is it, or are Republicans afraid that something really horrendous like that will come out about him during the presidential race?
I think it's hard to say. I think the RNC has obviously been playing catch up for quite some time on Donald Trump, underestimating his potential to end up being our nominee. So there's no telling what could potentially continue to come out, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think often one of the challenges has been that the more that you criticize Donald Trump, the more supporters of Trump sort of dig their heels in and say this is exactly why we support him, because we are, this is not, I don't think too many people who support him really like his policies. He hasn't put that many policies out. What they like is what he stands for in terms of sort of waving his hand at the people who have been in office.
All right. And what about millennial voters? We spoke with a conservative millennial journalist, Kristin Tate, who wants her peers to understand, quote, how D.C. politicians are taking you for a ride, end quote, and get them engaged to do something about it.
Absolutely, millennials are being duped. We are $19 trillion in debt right now. Every tax-paying American owes $160,000 to the federal government. And these politicians are spending like there's no tomorrow. And we're the suckers who have to pay for all this stuff. And a lot of us don't even know it.
Tate calls out politicians on the left and the right for wasting taxpayers' hard-earned cash. She describes the current state of the political system as seriously problematic, but fixable.
A lot of people know it's bad, but they don't realize how bad and toxic our political system has become. This is what I'm really trying to do with Government Gone Wild, is get the attention of young people so that they care. If we're all apathetic, we're just going to sink together on the Titanic.
Tate also has a message from millennials.
I think millennials are really sick of hearing politicians talk over and over about these social issues. We want to be left alone to live how we want to live. We want to cut the spending, we want a good job market, we want prosperity in the economy, but we want to live the way we want to live. I mean, it's a changing world. People live diverse lifestyles. My generation's the most ethnically diverse generation in America. These politicians really need to stop trying to butt into all of these issues in our personal lives and focus on how can we create pathways to opportunity.
Like most millennials, Tate says she has never felt fully aligned with one specific political party.
I call myself a conservatarian. When I'm with libertarians, I feel conservative. When I'm with conservatives, I feel libertarian. And I think that's true of my generation, generally speaking. I think we tend to be very free and open when it comes to social issues. But fiscally, I'm definitely more conservative.
Tate thinks millennials could have more political clout than they realize.
It's a great opportunity, actually, for any party, whether it be the Democrats, the Republicans, or a third party, to reach out to my massive generation. I mean, we could make up the nation's largest voting bloc this year.
In 2008, 60% of millennials registered to vote, according to a Pew Research study. But pollsters do not expect that level of engagement this year.
We have historic levels of distrust for the government. So Bernie Sanders is something new. He's fresh. He's an outsider. And I think that resonates with young people. And I don't believe that his policies will help my generation. I think we will see a Hillary-Trump matchup. And I think that a lot of millennials are going to be staying home unless Trump or Hillary really changes their tone in the general election.
Do you think that's possible, Jennifer? And if so, what would either one of them need to do to draw millennials in?
I think there's not really, at least in my experience, there hasn't been a natural partisan identity for millennials. I think they've been up for grabs for a while now. How do we take advantage of that? I think Bernie Sanders...
Well, do you know, by the way, and I don't know these numbers, but do they tend to lean left or right?
To the left.
As a group?
To the left as a group. But I think what you're seeing with these trend patterns with candidates like Bernie Sanders, candidates like even like Ron Paul several years ago, what you're finding is that they're tapping into that need to feel like someone's fighting for them, that they feel as though it's not politics as usual, it's politics as designed by them, which is how do I empower young people to get involved? How do I not look at it as the establishment? How do I look at it through the lens of how do I recapture that American dream and how am I a part of that? And I think that's what these young people are looking for, is that passion, and they're seeing it with Bernie Sanders, maybe more so than they are with the other candidates that are out there.
What does Hillary need to do to get the Bernie Sanders voters? I mean, a lot of people are talking about putting Elizabeth Warren on the ticket as her vice president. But what if she doesn't? What can she herself do?
Well, I think she can commit herself to the types of policies that young people have been excited about in the Sanders campaign. It's not just because he's a funny old man that they like him.
No, it's because he was promising things like free college, which isn't going to happen.
But listen,
it's unaffordable and ultimately is going to add to the tax burden on millennials that Kristin Tate is talking about.
Yeah, if we continue to do things the way we have done them, but we haven't even tried to make college more affordable in a serious way. And so that's what the Sanders campaign is saying, is we need to set the mark high, because if we keep going for these middling solutions, of course we're never going to get anywhere, and of course it's going to be unreasonable. If you look at the polling of young people, there's been some recent stuff done. The wrong question to ask is whether they support big or small government. That's totally not the right question. The right question is, what do they want the government to do? And they increasingly, year after year, support investments in healthcare for everyone, and they support the idea that the government should make sure everyone has a decent standard of living, has food and shelter. And so that's the question, is what do you want the government to do? And they want the government to uphold the social contract.
You know, it's so interesting when you look at millennials, their life is sort of entirely customized, right? They choose when and what they watch. They everything is mobile for them. They have, you can have your own sort of designer online at an affordable price that a millennial can afford. Everything is about customization. So there's absolutely no reason that they should want sort of the one-size-fits-all policies that Democrats put out there. This is once again
Do they care
an
about
opportunity.
tax rates?
Yeah.
Once we're out of college and paying,
get
their first paycheck and say, oh my God, I remember living in Manhattan where I grew up, and my first paycheck had 3 taxes taken out of it.
Right.
It's federal, state, and city. And I was like, I worked for this?
Yeah, right. No, we should be talking to them on the right about making their pay, or their work pay for them, right? We want to make sure that they have opportunities to sort of customize everything in their lives: education, greater freedom, workplace, eliminating barriers to entry, savings, being able to save in many different ways that are portable, whether it's for healthcare or for time off or for retirement. All of this should resonate with millennials if conservatives and, by extension, Republicans really want to address that.
But don't you think it's fascinating? Everybody wants to know what millennials are thinking and what they want. And everybody kind of speaks for them, but very few people actually ask millennials what they would like. And I feel like I'm a wannabe millennial. I was asked recently if I was a millennial. I'm not.
We think of you as a millennial.
Thanks. I can be either or. But my point is they are one of the most educated American generations coming to vote, and they're informed. I think that they're informed, they're educated, they're empowered. But wait,
I'm curious. What are you saying nobody asks them what they want? They're polled incessantly.
Yeah, they're polled incessantly, but I feel like on the news and in the media, and we're guilty of this too, like I get asked a lot, fellow panelists get asked a lot, and I feel like we need to have more women like this author, what's her name, Kate. Millennials need to start telling us, because I sometimes I feel like people are condescending to them, It's like this whole thing that happened with Hillary Clinton and Madeleine Albright and Gloria Steinem, which was a bit of a debacle and, some misunderstanding, but this whole thing of you have to vote for other women, otherwise you're going to go to hell. I mean, this is the worst thing you can do. And
for a millennial.
As a millennial, but also as a parent, I mean, I'm sure don't tell your kids what they should be doing.
I think the other thing that's very reductive in the conversation about millennials is we tend to use the word millennials to refer to a very small slice of that generation, to refer to a elite educated slice of a huge, very diverse generation. And so when we ask about engagement, when we ask about the politics and what they want, for a 27-year-old white privileged female, that's going to be a very different set of concerns than for a 22-year-old single mother who is working 3 jobs to pay for her child and doesn't have a high school diploma. So this is an incredibly diverse generation, and speaking to the needs of them requires a really nuanced set of policy solutions.
That being said, and them being informed, I will say that I think what they like about Bernie, even though a lot of these things aren't realistic, or how are you going to make college free for all and affordable for all, is that he's kind of romantic and revolutionary. I feel like Trump and Clinton don't have that. They want to be inspired and kind of taken off.
All they have to do is throw out, I'm going to have a revolution. We're going to make this country better. Is the word simply the word use of the term revolution
No, I think
enough?
that you have to stir them. I think Bernie Sanders really stirs them, but I don't think that's going to be enough for either parties.
And of course, in 2008 we had Obama, and
Sure.
neither of these candidates seems to, have the rock star quality. Although maybe not being, certain people see each of them as rock stars, but not to the extent that Obama had.
I think that you're also noticing, too, in this election, at least among this population, you're noticing what I would consider sort of a residual disappointment in the trajectory of the Obama administration. This sailing of hope and change. The recession hit their parents, it hit their families, it hit their debt, it hit their pocketbooks, and they're trying to get jobs, and they got told, go to college, you'll get a job. And then they're like, wait, there is no job. So they're looking and they're saying, who is that person for me? Is it John Kasich because he's compassionate conservative? Is it Bernie Sanders because he's going to fight for me and he's going to offer me free college? And if those two people aren't on the ticket, I don't know if they run to the next person, which is Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump.
All right. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay. From the vote to MoreThanMean. A video showing online sexual harassment has gone viral. MoreThanMean features men reading tweets that women sports journalists such as Julie DeCaro and Sarah Spain actually received.
No one should have to deal with this when you go to work. So, telling young women, this shouldn't happen, this is wrong, but get ready for it.
The tweets include physical threats, degrading comments,
and profanity.
I had talked pretty openly about being raped when I was in college. I'd written about it in 2013. And there were a couple tweets in there referencing that. One is that I hope you get raped again. There was one when I was reporting on the Patrick Kane case where a guy told me, several guys actually told me that I should be gang raped by the Blackhawks, or I should be killed with a hockey puck, or I should be raped with a hockey stick. So not all of them made it into the video because some of them were just so far over the line we couldn't really justify putting it in there. But that's the kind of stuff that both Sarah and I have been subjected to.
Though De Caro and Spain already read the tweets, the men who hadn't were visibly disturbed. Some had trouble making eye contact with the women, while others apologized
on behalf of other people everywhere.
When asked by a follower why not just block them, De Caro tweeted, "There are a million ways to get around being blocked, and the trolls know every one of them." Also this week, Twitter announced an update that will allow people to attach multiple abusive tweets to a single report to help investigate and solve the issue faster.
You experience this with your blog.
I experience this all the time. In fact, when this video was put out, and I was so happy to see it on social media, but at the same time, I'm like, this is an old issue. Because for so long, I mean, I've kind of gotten used to, I just don't read the comments. I don't read the comments. And it was funny because I was talking about this that I think last year my best friend's father came up to me and was just like, oh my goodness, I read one of your articles and then there were all these mean comments at the bottom. But for someone who's completely from out of this, I guess, sector, the media sector, I guess you would say, or isn't a woman writer online, he was shocked. And I was kind of like, oh, I just never read them. He's like, but one said this and one said that you deserve to be raped. I'm like, just don't read them, Mr. Brown, like, you know, but it made me realize how much I had just kind of blocked it out.
Well, the internet is the Wild West, and I mean, it may be. What's the approach? I mean, I think it's great that these women are, and Julie had a very good point. Get a crowd of other internet users screaming at the idiots who are making these ridiculous comments.
Right, and there's this anonymity factor, right? You are one of millions of people out there. You feel as though no one really knows you, but you can have an opportunity to say something really awful. I know that it happens to men as well, so it's not just a women's problem. It's sort of this issue of not wanting, of having sort of some anger that you want to sort of take out on someone without anyone knowing that you're doing it.
But not having done a survey of the internet at all, you're saying men get it. Do they get the same stuff? Do they get you should be gang raped and murdered?
Right. I suspect it's different. And I know just yesterday I spoke to a friend, a colleague who does a lot of television, and she was telling me about some of the nastiest tweets she got recently, because she had her dress wasn't lying just perfectly. And then she said, gosh, it was so mean. And I said, just push it out of your head. You're doing great work. Move on. But no, it's hurtful, of course.
But I also think that they should be prosecuted. Threats online should be prosecuted just like they are in real life. Threats on your life if you're going to be murdered or raped. I mean, I spoke about the India gang rape, which was a big story last year on CNN, and somebody wrote me on my private email, okay, because I always block this stuff on Twitter, and they said, how dare you, Bangladeshi, go up and say rape culture is a part of Indian culture. You deserve to be raped. And even though I have a thick skin and whatever, something about having a threat written out at you, I think it's just because you just reread it over and over again. And I feel like the same spaces...
Did you report them to the FBI?
I didn't. And when I told other people about it, a couple of months later, because I kind of just kept it to myself, my husband, my friends were shocked that I hadn't. And you know what they said to me? They said, what would you have done if this was your friend? You would have totally taken this, to the highest level. But I feel like the spaces that women had to fight for in real life, we're going to have to fight for those same spaces online.
You said two things, words. I mean, words hurt, and I think people realize that when you see it written down, it's very different than having someone tell you, and then the anonymity is a factor as well.
The other thing I want to say is most comments to TV shows. Look at the New York Times. They screen all the comments. Yeah. They get many fewer comments posted than, a fraction of the ones they get are posted because most are obscene and disgusting. And unless you the wackos out there and the people who are the normal people, but who are angry about something you said, are the ones who respond.
Right, and I don't have a good answer to how you fix this. Again, I think she makes the point of being able to
calling it out.
Calling it out is important. Shaming other people for shaming people that they shouldn't be shamed for.
Retweeting that tweet,
but your point about thick skin, I think that's what happens a lot of times with women is they go, well, she should have a thicker skin. Hey, it's criticism. You're in the sports industry. What did you expect was going to happen? But that's what's different about this is that these are sexual in nature. They're inappropriate. They're not just calling these women out for being bad sports writers. They're calling them out because they're like, well, women shouldn't be talking about sports. Women shouldn't be talking about things they don't know about, or your dress shouldn't look a certain way, or your outfit shouldn't look a certain way.
It's also,
and that's crossing the line, and it isn't about criticizing someone for their competency at their profession. It's criticizing them for their sex.
So there's a group called Women Action in the Media that's put out a big report and actually a toolkit for how Twitter could address this with a little bit more aggression on their part. And I think it's tricky for Twitter because they want to be a space for free speech and open dialogue. At the same time, they could do more to connect women who are being harassed with law enforcement, to have a clearer and perhaps broader definition of what constitutes actual threats and harassment. But I think the other thing to remember is that this isn't just a problem that's unique to Twitter, although Twitter is particularly good for these types of harassers to use as a platform. We also see sexual harassment being a pervasive problem in the sciences, for example, with women getting actually pushed out of the research fields. And so it is a problem with particular platforms and with the internet in general, but it's also just an issue in the workplace culture in this country and in many other countries in general.
And it's so sad, but we are working to fight it. That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/tothecontrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.